Greetings, runners, family, friends, and most importantly, the survivors. Welcome to my adopted hometown of Chicago. I hope everyone's enjoying themselves. Maybe did a little sightseeing today, maybe had a little deep dish, and everyone's ready to go for tomorrow. We had a great start to the festivities so far, with some of us getting to ring the opening bell at the Chicago Board Office Exchange yesterday and being honored for what we're doing. It's an incredible honor to be up here tonight to speak with you guys, and a little bit overwhelming. And the truth is, I have no idea why I'm up here. I've been to inspiration dinners before, and there's always someone incredible or some amazing family up here. My last inspiration dinner had Emma Whitehead and her family that you saw in the video earlier. These are the most inspiring people you can imagine. But me, how did I get up here? How did I get lumped in with these people? I'm just a normal guy whose family's been affected by cancer. And my story is your story. Any of us can get up here and share what we've been through, whether ourselves or with a family member or close friend. But here's the thing. To the outside world, we are inspiring. We're in the middle of it, so sometimes we lose perspective. But we are inspiring to each other and others looking in. My experience with cancer goes back about 20 years now. My family's been hit particularly hard, unfortunately. My aunt, who was the second mother to me growing up, died of lung cancer when I was 21. 2 years later, her husband, my uncle, died of liver cancer, which actually started as skin cancer and spread. My aunt and my mother had 3 first cousins. We were very close to that side of the family. And all 3 of those cousins had cancer, 2 of which had passed away over the last decade. And my wife's grandfather, a World War II vet, an absolutely amazing guy, died of cancer a few years ago. Luckily, our kids got to meet him. And this doesn't include friends who have faced cancer in their lives, including children, like Ellie Hopp, the 5-year-old daughter of my friend, and one of my honored heroes. When my aunt and uncle were both sick, my parents sprung into action. They helped take care of them both. They would be over at their house every day after work doing whatever was needed. In fact, my aunt didn't spend one night in the hospital. 2 years later, when my uncle got sick, they were right back at it, filling every role one needs in a situation like that. It's just the type of people my parents are. They were willing to do whatever it took, fully well knowing if the roles were reversed, my aunt and uncle would have done the same for them. Luckily for my brother and cousins, and now my own wife, kids, sister-in-law, and niece, we have an incredibly tight family. Well, as you all know, life isn't fair. In the fall of 2012, my father was having back pain and pain up through his shoulder. He went to a doctor thinking he had hurt himself exercising. He saw an orthopedist on a Friday morning for an MRI. By Friday night, he was admitted to NYU. All we knew was that the MRI picked up a massive tumor wrapped around his spine. Further tests showed what looked like other spots. Within a day or two, he was undergoing biopsies and all sorts of tests. None of them gave immediate answers. Many of you know what that's like, that wait. My brother and I flew in, and for about a week we waited by my dad's side trying to get any sort of news. And my dad, while scared, only was thinking about how we were handling it. Only wanted to make sure that if it was bad news, that we'd be okay, and we promised to look after our mom. Wouldn't have expected anything less. Like I said, it's the type of person he is. Other family also was there, with my Aunt Babs and cousin Stacy in New York by their side every day, my cousin Stu flying in from Chicago to give my brother and I breaks when needed, and making sure my parents always had the help they needed. In the end, we were lucky. It wasn't a cancer of a major organ, but it was lymphoma. Not exactly telling us it was a benign cyst, but at that point it was better than the alternative. My dad underwent radiation, then chemo. He handled it all with courage and grace, never complaining. Always said, well, if this is what it takes to get more time with my grandkids, it's worth it. And the results seemed promising. After 6 cycles of chemo, they told him he was in remission. They told him it would be hopefully years before he'd face any serious health threats. We were overwhelmed with joy, and we even headed to Mexico to celebrate last Thanksgiving as a family. He was feeling great. However, just a week after we returned, we got the news that cancer had roared back, less than 6 months after his chemo had ended. Due to the nature and aggressiveness of the lymphoma, his doctors recommended a clinical trial to get him back into remission, and then a bone marrow transplant. My father was one of only 140 people nationwide to get this trial chemo. He was actually number 140 in the study. This drug was a lifesaver. Not only did it get him back into remission and able to undergo the bone marrow transplant he needed, but the side effects were way less brutal than conventional chemo. It truly was a miracle drug, and just one of the many examples of what's in the pipeline to treat leukemia and lymphoma. And I think this is also a good spot to point out how amazing my mom is. taking care of Dad, dealing with everything, and still able to call and ask me if I was dressed warm every time Chicago's weather got under 60 degrees. It's the windy city. He underwent the bone marrow transplant in the spring. The first few weeks were hell on. But again, no complaints. None. Every time I called to see how he was doing, he turned the conversation around to see how I was doing. After 3 or 4 weeks, he turned the corner. As his white count went from literally 0 back to normal levels, everything seemed to slowly come around. We were finally able to see him in person 4th of July weekend, and I'll tell you, that first hug was the greatest hug of my life. I'm happy to say he's still in remission and perhaps even cured. Every month that passes, he's getting stronger, and we're more confident he's beating cancer. He's here tonight, and I just want to say, Dad, you're an inspiration to me, an inspiration to everyone you know. I do this for you, and I love you. Everyone handles a family illness differently, and everyone grieves in their own way. For years, I didn't like to talk about my aunt or uncle's illness as much as they defined me for quite a while. I rarely asked my cousins to talk about how they felt. I guess that changed a bit when it was our turn. As you all know, those first days after diagnosis are a whirlwind of emotion. I was sad, I was angry, I couldn't believe it was happening again. Why my family? My parents didn't deserve this. My amazing wife, my beautiful wife, was a rock. She was a shoulder to cry on, and she was there just to listen. And I had my brother and sister-in-law here in Chicago, and again, my cousins who had been through it all before. And I really learned, you can't deal with something like this without the love of others. So that's me. Sadly, I know this isn't isolated, and many of you have similar stories or worse. I've shared my story with people, and they say, well, what can I do? And I say, run a marathon and raise money for LLS. And they say, okay, other than that, what can I do? I mean, think about it. We're all hopefully ready to go tomorrow, but look back at all the training all of you've done. I'm sure some of you are actual athletes, but the rest of us, we're insane. But that's what's so special about this group. You've all made that sacrifice to wake up all those mornings and head out and run. That started for me right after my dad got sick. Running gave me an outlet. I don't know why, but the morning after I learned my dad was sick, I got up and I ran. There was just something about being out there with just my thoughts that was strangely calming. And I had a connection with my dad through running. He owned sneaker stores on Long Island when I was a kid, and he had buses for his customers to head into New York City for the marathon. I can remember the delicious hot cocoa I'd always get at the base of the Verrazano Bridge, and then the smell of the sweat and Ben Gay when everyone got back on the bus 8 hours later. So I joined TNT and set my sights on the Disney Half Marathon in January of 2013. I didn't know much about TNT or even LLS at the time, but I had a great coach and mentor in Marie Jarrow. She got me all the tools I needed, and it's also there for me and the team this weekend. The running was a bit of a disaster. I got injured and I couldn't train, so I ended up running the race pretty much cold turkey. But I raised a ton of money, $11,000, and more importantly, was doing something that gave my dad a lift. I definitely wanted to do it again, and when my dad's illness returned, I was in for sure. I originally planned on running the half marathon again. However, the most generous person I know, and hates the spotlight, and my wife's taping this so I can't mention him, made a crazy offer. If I would run the full marathon instead of the half marathon, he'd double everything I raised. I'd say his motivations were 80% charitable and 20% wanting to see me suffer. He'd always ask how my fundraising going, followed by how's that chafe treating you? But I got my revenge by going all out, and thanks to generous friends, family, and coworkers, raised $22,500 on my own, which after he doubled it, raised $45,000 for LLS. My $7,000 this week, I'm proud to have made it past my ultimate goal of $50,000. I don't throw these numbers out there at all as a humble brag, but to point out the generosity of others and to tell you, if you really dedicate yourself to fundraising, people will be moved and get behind you in numbers you probably didn't think possible. Sharing my story, really explaining why I was doing what I was doing, was the key to getting so much support. And this was all going on when my dad was in the middle of treatment. All the support I received made a huge difference to him. I mean, what a lift seeing hundreds of people donate in honor of him. And while his strength was diminished and he was in that clinical trial, he told his doctors there was no way he was missing my first marathon. He was there with me at the Inspiration Dinner at Disney and was there when I crossed the finish line. I hope tomorrow when you cross the finish line, you have the same swell of emotions that I did. Finally, I want to also point out something I hope you're all feeling right now without me even having to say. Being part of a team, seeing the effect of your efforts on the people who matter most, that's the best part of this all. Now, I started out on the flex team, so I was on my own for all my training runs. I had a great group of people, especially Crystal Gervais and Ryan Hatcher, plus my mentor vet and Coach Lauren, who's here, emailing me and checking in. But I did a lot by myself. So when I arrived at Disney, I knew I was on a team, but meeting everyone in person, that was the best. Seeing these other people, hearing their stories, and learning about their battles and why they were running, that made all those months of training worth it. So that feeling has only gotten stronger since. I decided to be a volunteer for the flex team for this race. I actually didn't plan on running, but next thing you know, I got an email that says, you're signed up for the race. So, okay, I'm running the race. I was fortunate enough to get to train with the Chicago team as well, and I want to thank Mike, Andy, and Rebecca especially for having me. Hearing the mission moments before the runs and seeing their dedication gave me an enormous lift. Just before our 20-miler, one of our teammates gave a mission moment. She had lost her mother just 2 weeks before, and here she was out with us. Having her share her pain and her story was incredibly moving. If she could be out there that morning, how could I not give everything I had? That's true inspiration. And I remember at that dinner at Disney, my dad turning to me and said, I can't believe all these people are doing this. I could tell, just being around TNT and knowing how many people were in this fight was giving him strength and cover. So take a look around and take it all in. Remember why you were doing this. Always remember that we are making a difference in the fight against cancer and in the lives of many. Good luck tomorrow. Go team!